Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And I'm back with another in-depth review of another issue of a very special miniseries. Talk to most X-Men fans who are remotely familiar with their uncanny history, or better yet, talk to any X-Men fan with an affinity for Jean Grey, and most will agree. Some of Jean Grey's best moments came under the pen of Louise Simonson. Her legendary tenure on X Factor during the 1980s helped lay the foundation for Jean Grey's modern form. While she might have come of age under the pen of Stan Lee and Chris Claremont, she grew into the woman she is now under Louise Simonson. So, in setting up the next major chapter of Jean's story, there are none more qualified to tell that story than her. And that story got off to a hell of a start in Jean Grey #1, the issue that largely dealt with the aftermath of the Hellfire Gala. Once again, Jean finds herself navigating death, as she's done multiple times before. However, death has rarely kept Jean from saving her loved ones. She may have failed in the present, so instead, she's looking to the past, trying to figure out where it all went so horribly wrong. She thought she could have changed things for the better. She thought by retaining the memories that she and the original 5 X-Men experienced during their trip to the future, she could somehow change how it all played out. But in the end, everything just went horribly wrong in a whole new way. But Jean is certainly not inclined to give up on fixing the past as well as the present. So in Jean Grey #2, she focuses on another critical moment in her story. Namely, that fateful moment when she first encounters the Phoenix Force. It is quite possibly the most defining moment of her character, if not the most defining moment in the history of the X-Men. Within the classic Phoenix Saga as written by Chris Claremont, Jean was the one to pilot the shuttle back to Earth, and in doing so, she was the one the Phoenix Force bonded with. But now, as she navigates death and her past once more, she wonders what might have happened if she'd let someone else make that sacrifice. And in Jean Grey #2, she sees how it could have played out. In this case, she lets Wolverine, a man she barely knows and doesn't much care for at this point in her life, make that fateful choice. Now, on the surface, it makes sense. Wolverine is tough as hell. He can heal. He's a survivor. And moreover, he is more than willing to do this. He just needs Jean's help in guiding him. This time, she offers that help. It even allows her to share a sweet moment with Cyclops, a moment that unfolds just as they think they're about to die. But she's unable to savor it because she needs to aid Wolverine, and in doing so, that gives her an intense, unfiltered taste of his memories and his dark past. It's not pretty, it's not pleasant. Wolverine's past has never been for the faint of heart. And it leaves a hell of an impression on Jean. But it leaves an even bigger impression on the Phoenix Force. Because this time, the Phoenix bonds with him, drawn to his rage, fueled by his desire for vengeance, violence, and retribution. Now, Wolverine has never been a stable mind to begin with, but the Phoenix Force pushes it to a dangerous extreme and beyond. Now, to some extent, this recourse does succeed. Jean sought to change the course of these pivotal events, and she certainly did. Wolverine was able to pilot the shuttle instead of her, and he survived as he so often does in dangerous situations. Jean, Cyclops, and the rest of the X-Men survive as well. Professor Xavier even manages to help the team slip away before there's too much scrutiny over the shuttle crash. They have every incentive to lie low now. Sean Cassidy even agrees to let the team stay at his keep in Ireland. But Jean Grey is not willing to just let this go. She saw into Wolverine's mind. She knows what's driving him and what the Phoenix Force is fueling. So she decides she's going after him, hoping to save him from becoming consumed by this power. And Cyclops, never one to let Jean shoulder a burden on her own, decides to go with her. This leads the two of them to a Weapon X facility in Canada. But it's not just where Wolverine got his adamantium bones. This is where he was subjected to all the torment Jean saw in his mind. Suddenly, in her eyes, Wolverine is no longer this insufferable jerk who refuses to get along with anyone. Now, he's a broken, tormented man filled with anger and rage. And he's going to unleash all of it on everyone he holds responsible for Weapon X, no matter how much carnage that leads to. But Jean still wants to save him, because that's just the kind of person she is. That's where her greatest strength often lies, empathizing with those others can and fighting to save them. But this ends up being a very different kind of fight. Wolverine, still very much empowered by the Phoenix, is already well into his rampage. He's already killed the leaders and the heads of Weapon X, but that's nowhere near enough for him. He is tearing through anything and anyone remotely associated with it, and by the time she and Cyclops reach him, he's already killed plenty. But despite all this bloodshed, Jean does not believe it's too late. She manages to reach him. She manages to bring him back to his senses, at least to a limited extent. But even then, Wolverine himself realizes that this is too much. He understands what the Phoenix Force is doing to him. It's effectively weaponizing his will, making his anger and desire for vengeance the catalyst for its power. And he cannot control it. Wolverine has never been good at controlling his rage to begin with. Now he's just way past the point of no return, not unlike Jean was during the original Phoenix Saga. And also like Jean, Wolverine asks that she and Cyclops kill him before it's too late. But the Phoenix Force still doesn't make it easy for them. Before either of them can strike that final blow, it flies out of Wolverine and into Cyclops, drawn by his own passions and desires. This leads to another powerful moment, one reminiscent of the moment he and Jean shared at the end of the Dark Phoenix Saga, the moment before Jean made the ultimate sacrifice. The Phoenix Force is now offering to make Cyclops' desires real, to share this moment with the woman he loves. He clearly wants that moment, and Jean wants it too. Even as he urges her to kill him, to not let the Phoenix use him the way it used Wolverine, she just can't. She refuses to accept such a fate. But ultimately, the tragedy is unavoidable. While Jean is unable to do what Cyclops asks, Wolverine is. And he delivers the killing blow, both to Cyclops and the Phoenix Force, in a heartbreaking sacrifice. It makes for a terrible but beautiful moment, one where Jean has to watch two men that she loves and cares about deeply die because of a choice that she made. Her heart might have been in the right place, as it so often is. Her approach might have even been sound, hoping that someone else could have changed how things played out with the Phoenix. But the events of Jean Grey number 2 now make it painfully clear. If anyone else had taken her position, it would have only ended in a far greater tragedy. Just like the previous issue, it leads to a painful realization for Jean. That fateful moment when she encountered the Phoenix Force, as difficult as it was, and as tragic as it turned out for her and everyone involved, there really was no other way. She, Jean Grey, had to be the one to pilot that shuttle. She had to be the one to bond with the Phoenix Force. And ultimately, she had to be the one to make the ultimate sacrifice. It's a painful but oddly profound reminder. It affirms that she made the right choice to pilot that shuttle, just as she made the right choice to erase her memories of the future in the previous issue. As hard as it was, and as heartbreaking as it was, doing what she did in those moments averted a far greater tragedy. And for someone like Jean, whose character is so defined by tragedy, it's both appropriate and beautiful in its own unique way. It reinforces just how critical these moments are to her story and to the rest of the X-Men. While this is all well and good for the past, it still doesn't help Jean much in the present. She is still determined to fix what happened at the Hellfire Gala. So, with this harsh perspective in mind, she decides to focus on another critical moment in her story, a moment that also happens to be critical with someone closely aligned to her, namely her clone, Madeline Pryor. So, the stage is once again set. Jean is going to revisit the events of Inferno, the moment where her life clashed with that of the Goblin Queen. It wasn't just a defining moment for Jean Grey, It was one of the most impactful events of Louise Simonson's run on X Factor. And there is no one more capable or qualified of making that moment even more impactful. Jean Grey number 2 was another tragic but heartfelt journey. Reading this issue, you just know Jean is going to find a way to fix the present no matter how many hard lessons from the past she has to endure. But it's still going to be painful, frustrating, and even gut-wrenching at times. But that'll only make her stronger and more determined in the end. And personally, I look forward to seeing that strength unfold even more in the coming issues. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.